Hello, and welcome to We Live for Saturday, your favorite college football podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike, and with me, as always, is your other co-host, John. John, how are you doing on this Friday? Always a good day.
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. It feels like summer. The
Yeah.
80s have arrived this week.
I
Too
know.
early, in my opinion,
Oh,
but
way too early to be this hot.
it
Yeah.
is what it is,
I had to break out the sandals, man.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see, that spring is here, and you can see all the leaves coming out on the trees and the flowers in the garden and all that. So that's nice. It's a nice feeling, anyways, that you have that kind of stuff to look forward to. I just hope that like the humidity and the long weeks of consistent heat maybe just hold off for a few more weeks. That'd be great.
I mean, historically, June should be devoid of too much, right? Like the real humidity comes in July and August and early September, right? Like I feel like June should be free of that, but I also feel like it gets hotter earlier every year.
Yeah, agreed.
So it's like, when does the humidity come with the heat? I mean, I will tell you, I was at the lake this past weekend. I got out, got the pontoons in, got the pontoon out, got out on the water, and it was glorious.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was less glorious when we were putting the tarp on the boat and a bolt that was like, wasn't even what we were working on. It was just a bolt just happened to be loose and fell in the water. And you can guess who got to dive in for that in 50-degree water. Man, let me tell you, I've dove 6 times for that. Didn't get it any of the times. And by the end, there were parts of me receding. Yeah. I mean, it was rough, man. It was really cold. Like, it was like that cold where it hurts your balls a little bit.
Yeah.
Sorry, not to get too graphic. This is a family-friendly show, so I won't go past that. But men, you know what I mean. When it's so cold, and it's always the balls first, right? It's the rest of you is like, oh, I can kind of adjust to this, and your balls are like, no, man, this isn't cool.
I've been there, man. I've been there. Yeah. I remember having stuff like that happen to me when I was a kid too, and it was always my.
So that was stressful time. Always stressful getting the cabin ready for the summer.
Yeah.
And that's always stressful. I feel like it's always more stressful getting ready for the summer than it is like closing up at the end of the summer.
Yeah.
Because when you're just putting things away, it's different than like bringing everything up and making sure it still works, and like trying to remember how the rototiller works, and like
yeah. No, you're kind of starting over and trying to jog your memory of like, where does this go? How does this work again? And I
it's been 9 months. 9 months since, and probably like a full year since you got some of that stuff out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got it. Well, I'm glad you got up there and you got to enjoy some of the nice weather though. So that's
it was great, dude. It was great. We'll have to get you back to our lake, John. I'm not gonna divulge, but John and I both grew up on the same lake.
Yep.
Didn't know it until we met much later.
Yeah.
But we both grew up on the same lake.
Yep. It's wild. Yeah. But I'd love to get back up there sometime. It's been a long time, and I miss it, man. I just love being in Lake Country in general.
Yeah, dude. We'll get you and the fiance out there. We'll have a good time.
That'd be great. Awesome. Cool, man. Yeah. So things are good, and obviously things seem to be good with you. So we got a lot to cover here, so maybe we should move right on along. And before we get into anything, as always, if you want to find We Live for Saturday, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. You can find us on Twitter at We Live for B1GSat. You can find Mike at Alibaba26. You can find me, John, at Norwegian Gopher. You can also email us, We Live for Saturday, b1g@gmail.com.
So, John, we made some people angry last week with coach rankings.
Yeah.
And now we're going to make people really angry today, and we're going to do program rankings. And just so everyone knows, we're doing our program ranking in a very specific sort of way. This is not predictive. I'm going to say that again. These are not predictive rankings. This isn't what we think is going to happen going forward. This is looking at the last 15 years since Nebraska joined the Big Ten. It's been 15 years. Looking back at those 15 years, I know, crazy, right?
Wow.
Looking back at those 15 years and seeing and ranking the programs by how well they did during that stretch.
Mm-hmm.
So if your program you're like, oh, we're in one of the lowest tiers. And we also didn't do a 1 through 18 ranking. We ranked them into 4 tiers.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're saying, oh, my program's in the lowest tier or one of the lowest tiers, or we should be up a higher tier, it's not predictive. It's looking back at what you did the last 15 years against the competition you faced and comparing it. Yeah. So it's in no way are we saying that you won't succeed going forward just because you failed, if your program failed a lot in the last 15 years.
Well, Indiana Hoosiers, man,
Yes.
like look at where they're heading now and the possibility, look at Illinois and where they've been. And we'll cover all of this obviously, but like things are moving in a more positive direction. It doesn't mean that this is where you're going to stay. It just happens to be where you've been. So yep. Cool.
Awesome. And John, we got some news though to get to before we talk program rankings.
Yes, we do. What do you want to start with?
Should we start with the Ross Dellinger thing and just get angry right away?
Yeah, let's
do it. So Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports came out with a new story about the projected expanded college football playoff, John. And I know you've got the details, I believe.
Yeah, well, instead of going from 12 to 14, we're just going to skip right on ahead to 16 because why not, right? And I don't know, I'm not entirely sure if they're planning on just incorporating this year or next year. But within the Big Ten and the SEC, that's where the most momentum is coming from. And obviously, as we both know, the Big Ten and the SEC are essentially run college football and can call all the shots. So with this format, it supports a 16-team bracket. It would be 4 SEC teams, 4 Big Ten teams, 2 ACC teams, 2 Big 12 teams, 1 G6 team, and 3 at large. So you would have these auto bids, which obviously both you and I are not in favor of auto bids at all.
Nope.
So this would be says with season-ending interleague play in games, 3rd place versus 6th, 4th versus 5th. So that kind of, and I think like 1 versus 2, like it's this whole thing. So I understand what they're trying to go for and trying to make it more even. And I like the fact that there would be 8 on-campus games. So like at least they're trying to incorporate that more because I think the fans have spoken out and made that very clear that that's what people want.
Yeah.
But either way, like this is just not something I think is necessary.
No.
It's just more greed for the college football playoff and the TV networks. And I could live with a 16-team playoff, 14 or 16, if it wasn't auto bids. That's my biggest gripe with it. Do I think it's necessary to go to that number? No. But if they eliminated auto bids, I could find a way to be like, okay, well, I can deal with that, a little bit better. So what are your thoughts?
I mean, my thoughts are that the Big Ten and the SEC are gaming the system for themselves, but they've outsmarted themselves. Mm-hmm. Because here's the thing. The Big Ten and SEC teams are going to be ranked at the top of the polls anyway.
Yeah.
Because those programs have the most resources, and everyone knows that now. And so they recruit the best, and everyone knows that now. And so the top teams in those leagues are going to be at the top. That's just the way it's going to be.
Yep.
So you don't need to do this auto bid thing. And what's going to happen is by guaranteeing 2 for the ACC and 2 for the Big 12, you're going to have at some year, there's not always going to be 2 Big 12 teams or ACC teams in the top 16, especially the Big 12. Those are schools that all have average resources. None of them have, one of them have high-end resources. So by guaranteeing 4 auto bids for 2 leagues that I would say each don't necessarily deserve more than 1, if any, mm-hmm. You're putting yourself in a bad position. Because what's going to happen is the SEC and the Big Ten, you give away those 5 auto bids to the group of 5, Big 12, ACC. And then what's going to happen is there's going to be a year where you have 5 or 6 deserving teams and only 4 or 5 of them are going to get in. Because, and especially if you're the Big Ten, because we know the SEC, because of the way preseason rankings work and the fact that the SEC always has the advantage in the preseason because it's the ESPN bias that permeates through college football and has for 2 decades. Regardless of what happens in the field, the SEC has the most preseason ranked teams, which means they have the most postseason ranked teams.
Yep.
No matter what happens on the actual gridiron.
Yeah,
so it's going to be the Big Ten. It's not going to be the SEC that misses out. Tony Petitti. It's not going to be the SEC that misses out because their 9-3 teams are going to be ranked high. It's you in the Big Ten. You're going to have a 10-2 team that's ranked like 20th in the country that doesn't get in.
Yep.
You know, or ranked like, not 20th. You're going to have a 10-2 team that's ranked like 15th in the country, 16th in the country, 14th in the country, and they're not going to get in because of these auto bids for other leagues.
Yep.
So it's stupid and it's greedy on the side of the Big Ten and SEC, but I don't even think they're acting in their own best interest. That's what drives me nuts. It's like it's the blind leading the blind, man. It's like you think because people have power that they're going to be smart, and that's just not how life usually works.
No.
And the people with the most power, I mean, look at politics. The people with the most power tend to be dumb. Really dumb, just happen to be really well connected and have a lot of money behind them.
Yep.
So and this is not a political podcast. We're not going to get into anything specific, but like that's, you're a representative, your congressperson, your president, they're not smart. You've seen them try to talk. Like Tommy Tuberville was a college football coach. Now he's a senator. And let me tell you, Tommy Tuberville ain't smart.
No.
He is not a brainy guy.
No. Agreed. Yeah.
So anyway, and anyone who's ever covered him will corroborate that.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I've heard other journalists, speak to the effect of how dumb he is. So I just think this is really stupid, John. I think it's short-sighted. You're cutting off your nose to spite your face, and the SEC it's not the SEC that's going to pay the price. It's the Big Ten that's going to pay the price for this mistake.
Yeah, and again, what I think this is all leading to is obviously more money for the TV networks and the Big Ten and the SEC is the theory, but it's also, I think it's from other sources and people that I watch and listen to, it's also leading into the inevitability of more college football expansion for the Big Ten and the SEC. And so they can have more high profile schools that will get the benefit of the doubt in the rankings and therefore be able to, capture these auto bids and whatnot. So that's what this is also leading to. They're setting the stage. It's going to happen, I think, sooner than later. I think everyone has like 2030 to 35 or whatever for all this stuff to happen. The more I listen to and talk to and read and whatever, the more it seems like things are moving in a faster direction. The fact that they're willing to skip from 14 to 16 tells me that they're trying to accelerate.
They're not even doing 14. They're skipping from 12.
Yeah, sorry, 12 to 16.
12 to 16. They're skipping 14, which I think is crazy. 14 is ideal because your top 2 seeds still get buys.
Yeah.
Like 16, your best team in the country doesn't even get a bye.
Yeah.
They have to play in round 1. Is that fair? No. Should you have to, after you go undefeated and win your conference title game, so you're playing an extra game anyway, then you have to go and play a first round playoff game? And if you're 1 or 2, you'll get people seeded low, but someone seated low could be an at-large bid from your own conference from a team that's a thorn in your side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I don't know. I think there should be a reward for I like the first. We had the top 4 get buys.
Yep.
I thought that was good. In the 14 team model, I think the top 2 would get buys. 16 teams, nobody gets a buy.
Yeah.
So you're basically making this an NFL schedule for anyone who wants to win a national championship.
Which is just another reason why they're accelerating this whole process of the, getting the SEC and the Big Ten to 20 teams.
But yet they're not accelerating the collective bargaining aspect of it. Interesting.
Yeah.
Even though that's what,
Well, we can talk about maybe on the next pod too, because I just saw something about how they're talking about salary caps for NIL.
They can't do that. That'll never hold up in court, ever. Ever. And you know what? Like, you know what happens if they put a salary cap on NIL, John?
What?
They start giving people money in suitcases again.
Yep.
We go under the table again.
Exactly.
And we know what happens when we go under the table. The Southern schools win because they have more bagmen than we do.
Yep.
Because Northern people don't want to break any rules. We want to just donate our money and not be like, I'm breaking a rule. We want to donate our money above board. Yep. So, yeah, man, I think the NIL cap is a desperate move from people who want to go back to the days of bagmen.
Yep.
Because the thing is, even these big schools that have the biggest NIL, a lot of them are dependent on the same handful of like rich donors.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of donor fatigue. You know, that's one of the benefits. I will say Minnesota doesn't have all the biggest like whales, but we do have a lot of members. Yeah. So it's like we're shouldering it a little more equally, the burden of that. And it's, you know, by a lot of people putting in a little bit as opposed to a few people putting in a lot.
Yeah.
And I think some of the schools that are even traditionally really successful, they're rich donors. They're tired. They're tired of paying all this money. Yeah. They're tired of paying, millions of dollars. Like they don't want to have to do it all the time. They want their team to win, but they don't want to have to pay that all the time. And it's like they want to go back to the days where you could give a guy $50,000 in a briefcase and that was it, and he was yours for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
But those days aren't coming back. Not coming back.
I really hope not.
No, there's no John. You think that'll for a second hold up in court?
No, I don't. I just know that someone is going to try real hard to make that happen.
Yes,
and I can guarantee you it's someone from the Southeastern Conference.
I think though that's where the athletes will be like, wait a second.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Like if you want to talk about there being a strike, you try to limit NIL, see if players show up or not.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they don't want to go back. The players, they've seen the promised land.
Yep.
They don't want to go back to the old days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, moving on then, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, my blood's up, John.
Yeah.
I didn't rant. I kept it under control.
No, it was good.
Which is better than I can say. Can I say that I was guesting on a Southern podcast last week, and I just casually made the point about ESPN SEC polling bias.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the other guests lost his mind, called me the R word, and screamed over me as loud as he could. And it was like, I was like, wow, these guys, I really struck. Is it really, are they so fragile in the South that they can't admit what's obvious to everyone else in that there's massive polling bias? Like, why does that hurt you? Why does that bother you so much? Why does that ruin your self-image, Southern football fans?
Maybe because it strikes a nerve of truth and reality, and they don't want to admit to that. So being in denial or becoming loud and verbose and insulting just covers up your insecurity, and all it does is read is that, like to me, and I watched that episode and this, that person was that's all it screamed to me. There was no actual points being made. There was nothing of valid, there was no valid points. There was no actual facts, no evidence. It was just spouting off random stuff and expressing his hurt feelings and that he's upset and thinks it's just ridiculous. And because I'm sure, again, like everyone else around the country has seen this go on for how many decades now? Like
20 years.
At least 20 years. Yeah.
I mean, I guess, well, okay, if we're fair, I think the ESPN and the NCAA, ESPN and the SEC partnered in like 2006. So yes, like 19 years.
And look, and I know we're a Big Ten podcast and we're here to represent and talk about the Big Ten. And obviously we want to talk about it in a positive light, but like, if the shoe were on the other foot, there would be no way I would say like that, why would I lie about the fact that we don't lie about the fact that the Big Ten benefits more than the Big 12, than the ACC and like the, gets the benefit of the doubt in certain instances. And so because we have more money and that helps and the funding helps, but like the SEC, when you approach that with a lot of their fans and a lot of those people down there, they get really upset. And I don't understand why a lot of people cannot have a real, like, honest conversation about it. And it's not, you didn't say anything that was insulting to that person.
No, I was a guest. I was trying to be a good guest.
Yeah, and like, having just an opinion and a thought, and that you backed it up with facts, but like this person just couldn't handle that and embarrassed themselves. So
yeah, it was funny, but I do think it's funny that the bubble's going to continue to burst, and I just think, man, if and when the Big Ten wins a third consecutive national title this year, I mean, some people are going to lose their actual minds.
Oh yeah.
They've been able to talk themselves into that these 2 years were an aberration. But if a third, especially if it's Penn State, if it's not Ohio State or Michigan, if it's a third different Big Ten team to win a national title in 3 years, if it's a Penn State, if it's an Oregon, like that would, dude, they'd lose. I'm rooting for it to happen just to see I think the meltdown. Paul Feinbaum could kind of be like, yeah, the Big Ten's on top, but we're going to still downplay them. But like, that would be kind of earth shattering. If that happens this year.
Well, and in a way, even if Texas wins, like let's say theoretically Texas wins the national title this year.
Which they could. But
like, they're so new to the conference. Like, I mean, then you can make the same argument with Oregon, I guess. But
yeah,
I don't know. I think, well, I also want to note that this person, we commented on one of their videos as well, and both of our comments, I believe, were promptly deleted.
I commented on the video to make my point. I was like, he posted it on his channel, and I was like, yeah, when he was cutting me off, I made these points, and here are the other points I was gonna make before he started screaming, and then we had to change subjects.
Yep.
Because time ran out on the segment, and like he just deleted that. Yeah.
Some people don't like facts, man. Don't bother me with the facts.
No, they don't. They don't want it at all.
No.
But we bring the facts because right now the facts favor the Big Ten.
That's right.
And that's what I enjoy. All right. So should we talk about Bill Belichick briefly, since that's a weekly segment now?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
Okay. So this morning it came out that Bill Belichick's girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, it was announced that she was banned from the North Carolina facilities, and that they were worried about how it would impact not just North Carolina's reputation, but Bill Belichick's reputation, which now they're intertwined, right? The university immediately put out a statement refuting that, saying that she's welcome at any time. So what it seems like is people are fighting behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And there are people at North Carolina potentially who do want her banned.
Yeah.
And do want to not deal with the Belichick drama anymore. And sorry, North Carolina, you signed up for it. You knew he was in this relationship. You should have, how volatile people in their early 20s can be. Like, this is kind of a dance with the one that brung you moment, but it shows it. There are people who are betting that Bill Belichick never coaches a game at UNC because this has gotten so bad.
I mean, it's talked on by a lot of people with a much bigger platform than us. I mean, I know On 3 has talked about it. I'm sure, I don't know for sure if Cover 3 has or not, but it's a legitimate concern.
Yeah.
I don't know how it couldn't be. Yeah.
You know who's laughing right now with a bowl of popcorn and a mint julep? Mac Brown. Mac Brown sitting back like, oh, I wasn't good enough for you, so you hired a guy also my age, but like I'm a good family man, and I glad-handed boosters, and I made everybody happy, and now you've got this guy who don't want to do any of that. And also he's got this giant distracting relationship thing where he was kind of a predator and he groomed a 21-year-old. And it's all gross to people.
Yep.
And they're stuck with it now. And it's like, I'm sure Mac Brown is sitting back like, I could have bounced back and had a good season. I could have bounced back a little bit, and people wouldn't be talking about North Carolina like this right now. We wouldn't be a standing punchline. So yeah, I think I think deep down Mac's got to be enjoying this.
Oh, I'm sure. I know I would be. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of like when Glenn Mason was fired and then Tim Brewster just sucked, and Glenn Mason didn't even have to talk about how fun it was, like how good it was. You could just see the grin on his face. And he was like, yeah, you should have stuck with me. Should have done it. All right. Yep. We got a couple more news items to breeze through quickly. John, Notre Dame and Clemson agreed to play to a 12-year deal to play 12 consecutive games. And on the years when they were going to be on the schedule anyway, it's a conference game. And I guess on the other years, it's going to count as a non-conference game for Clemson.
Well, the thing is this inevitably what this is just another feeble attempt for Notre Dame to try to solidify the ACC in some kind of way, making more money. As we've talked about, and if we haven't, then the ACC is talking about going to a revenue sharing system where it's brands versus non-brands, which is going to kill the conference even quicker if they
already have schools that are really poor.
Yeah.
They have schools that are poorer than the average school, than a school in the SEC or the Big Ten. If they do that, those poor schools are going to be even poorer compared to their competition.
You're going to kill off so many programs and so many universities, and it's a death sentence.
Man, what happens to Wake Forest?
Yeah.
What happens to Boston College?
Yeah.
Like what happens to Pitt? What happens to, I don't know, dude. It's not great.
It's not. So this is just something that I know that's part of the reason. The other reason, which does affect the Big Ten, is that USC, as of now, has not renewed their rivalry past 2026 with Notre Dame, which is pretty wild, actually, when you think about it. There is, Clemson and Notre Dame have a relatively new rivalry that's more or less like out of respect for each other, and they've been both really competitive in the ACC football conference. But there is long-standing hatred between USC and Notre Dame.
Oh, it's their biggest rivalry, arguably. Yeah. You can argue it's as big as USC UCLA.
Yeah, absolutely. So losing that. Yeah. I understand they're trying to protect their scheduling because Notre Dame obviously is, as we've talked about before, with the ever expanding, Big Ten and SEC and them going, the SEC now going to non-conference games. It's going to limit Notre Dame's ability to schedule some tougher teams. So they're trying to lock down contracts like this to hopefully keep their strength of schedule, because what's going to kill them is Notre Dame is going to be forced to inevitably have to join a conference if their strength of schedule is too weak, which we've already seen that moving in that direction. Because who's going to want to schedule Notre Dame if you're already playing 9 games in conference, or possibly, not that we ever want this to happen, but 10 games is also been thrown out there. You're not scheduling. No. You're not going to schedule Notre Dame.
No.
You're not doing it.
Nobody. Why would you? Yeah. They pay the price. USC thought they were going to be bigger and badder in the Big Ten than they were. And they played both USC and LSU out of conference and then had to play 9 Big Ten games. And I think they realized they don't want to ever do that again.
Yeah.
So
that's the possibility there, which I think is foolish. But at the end of the day, man, contracts like these are broken all the time. So anyone who's thinking that oh man, this is locked in Notre Dame, they're like, oh man, and the ACC is going to survive somehow through this, which is wild to anyone who actually thinks that. It's like I said, it's another feeble attempt of trying to maintain their independence when the walls are closing in on them. And I will be surprised if this actually sustains. I think because it's 2027 is when when this is all supposed to start.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's ever going to see the light of day. I don't. I'm not saying that they won't ever play Clemson again, but I don't think that a 12-year contract is going to stay. I don't think that's going to happen, because I do think the inevitability is that Notre Dame joins the Big Ten, and then therefore, why would you continue to play?
And Clemson? Once they're in the Big Ten, they're not going to want to play Clemson.
Exactly.
Because that's too tough.
The only way that might happen is if that Big Ten SEC, if both conferences go to 20 teams or whatever, and then there's a Big Ten SEC scheduling agreement. That's the only way that could possibly stay alive, but I don't think
that ever happened.
They would reschedule everything and everyone if that were the case. So yeah. So that's it, man. Yeah, but USC, how do you feel about losing that long-standing rivalry? I mean, I wouldn't be happy if they told us all of a sudden that Minnesota Wisconsin was just not going to play anymore after 2026.
Unacceptable.
I would be furious.
Unacceptable. And here's the thing, man. USC has an attendance problem. People don't go to their games. So UCLA and Notre Dame are two games that people actually go to.
Yeah.
But most of their games, even when they were in the pack, people didn't go to most of their games.
Mm-hmm.
I got cheap tickets to USC games, and you could get cheap tickets in like the first 5 rows at USC, like whenever you wanted.
Wow.
You can't just walk into a Big Ten stadium and do that anywhere else. I mean, I guess at UCLA, but like you can't anywhere else in the Big Ten. You can't just walk in and do that.
Yeah.
So I know everyone's like USC is recruiting really well and everything's on the up and up. And I think, yeah, they have a lot of positives, but the fact that they don't really have a fan base and they're eliminating a game that the fans actually care about, or they don't have much of a fan base and they're comparing, they have a big online fan base. I'll give them that.
Yes.
But like shows up to games fan base, no, they don't really have that. And I think this is just going to hurt that even more.
Yeah. Well, and it'll hurt. I mean, maybe not as much, but like it'll hurt Notre Dame as well. There's a lot of Irish fans out there who value this rivalry, and as they should. That's what we love about college football is longstanding traditions continuing and maintaining for years and years and years. So,
well, if Notre Dame joins the Big Ten, they can start playing Michigan and USC.
Yep, and Michigan State and
Michigan State and Purdue all the teams they want to play.
Yep, exactly. So.
All right. So, John, do you want to briefly talk about this conspiracy to break up the Big Ten and the SEC in search of parity?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's worth spending a ton of time on because it's ridiculous on so many levels.
And it'll never happen ever.
No. It's all it is jealousy, man. Like it's envy. And I get it, honestly. Like I get it. I don't even blame people who are upset about it. But this is like they're expecting like Teddy Roosevelt to come in and like break up the conferences, just like you understood. You got that's.
If you didn't get that joke, you need to study a little bit more American history.
Yes.
Teddy Roosevelt famously broke up the big banks, trust busted them.
Yep.
Other big companies. Yeah, so that's funny. That's funny. What they really want to do, though, John, is they don't want to break Ohio State and Oregon and Penn State. That's not who they're after.
No.
They want to take a piece out of Minnesota and Illinois and
Wisconsin,
Michigan
Iowa,
State, Iowa, Wisconsin, Washington. They want to take all of us down a peg.
Yep.
They want us to have fewer resources than they do because they think it's unfair that we make more money because we're in the Big Ten. And it's like, we also have bigger fan bases than you do.
Yep.
We sell more merch than you do. We, all that kind of stuff. So like, yeah, good luck, but that's never happening because the Big Ten and that's also why I don't think a super league is ever happening because the Big Ten and the SEC, I think, are too smart to break it up. And we'll talk as we get into our program rankings in the next segment. The teams at the top are used to winning a lot. And they don't want to go to a super league where they suddenly aren't winning as much because that will piss their fans off and they won't watch as much.
Well, and it's also like we talk about it all the time, how much like we dislike the SEC. Like now if you're intermingling, you're putting all of these Big Ten and SEC teams, these top tier programs together, like that kills off so much of that. And there's going to be generations where like that rivalry just between conferences is going to wane and people will lose interest strictly. I don't know, man. I just think it's foolish. You can make money on the fact that the Big Ten and the SEC hate each other.
Yes.
Why would you stop doing that?
Why would you break it up? It's stupid.
Dumb.
It's a stupid idea.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever happening.
No.
All right. Should we get into our highly contentious program rankings? All right. So again, want to be clear. We are ranking every football program based on what has happened from 2011 through now and where we are now. And we weighted it a little more towards the present, but really we're looking at a 15-year, essentially snapshot of where each team is. So this isn't predictive. Again, I'll say this isn't where we think your team's going to be necessarily, although a lot of times it will be. This is where your team has been.
Yes.
And when it was close between the tiers, we decided, we had to make some tough decisions, and we'll explain those as we go. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so this is a snapshot. And John, it's kind of interesting to look at, you get so caught up in the present that you forget the way things normal, or not normally, but like the way things have been.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are programs on this list that surprise me, both with how many games they've won and also how many games they've lost.
Yeah. 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 It's that, you get caught up in the present, and then some people get way too caught up in the past, so, but we're going to try to keep it from this point in time and keep focus there. So
that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we always go lowest to best. Like when we did coach rankings and whatever, we went 18-1. So this time we didn't do straight 1 through 18. We did these in tiers. We broke the teams into 4 tiers. Tier 1 is the best tier. Tier 4 is the worst tier. And we broke them out based on that. So we're going to start with tier 1. We're going to start with the best teams and talk about, where they've been between 2011 and now, and kind of what our thoughts are. We'll each give our thoughts kind of where we see things going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Sound good?
Yep.
Cool. All right. So tier 1. I mean, you couldn't really start anywhere else other than Columbus, could you?
No.
And the Ohio State Buckeyes. Ohio State is 159-26 since 2011. That is an 86% winning percentage. Over that same period, they are 103-14 in the conference. But remember, John, in 2011, Luke Fickell was the interim.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Ohio State lost like 6 conference games.
Something like that, yeah.
So if you take out 2011, since 2012, Ohio State has lost 8 conference games. 8.
That's wild.
It's
insane.
Bananas, man. It's crazy. So Ohio State has been king, and it's good to be king. And also, if you take away the Luke Fickell season, you're talking about a 90+% win percentage.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's nuts too. The Fickell thing was a blip. Urban Meyer came charging into town in 2012 and immediately went undefeated. They would have won the national title that year if not for the postseason ban. Mm-hmm. Because they would have been up against Notre Dame, because Notre Dame was number 1. And Alabama crushed that Notre Dame team. I mean, they ran them off the field. They didn't even belong on the same field. So Ohio State would have also run Notre Dame off the field.
Yeah.
So if they had, Urban Meyer, won a national title at Ohio State, but it should have been 2. And when he beat Michigan 7 out of 7 times, mm-hmm. which is amazing. And when he went to the NFL, he left enormous shoes to fill. Enter former offensive coordinator, now turned head coach Ryan Day, who, John, has been even better and more consistent than Urban was.
Yeah.
He has only a single natty, but just like Urban, he should have had 2 if not for the Marvin Harrison concussion against Georgia a few years back.
Mm-hmm.
The only knock on Day, John, the only one is that he's lost 4 straight to Michigan. And that last loss to Michigan, they were favored by 20. So that was brutal. Mm-hmm. But he made up for it by winning the national title. Buckeye fans, though, are desperate to beat Michigan and to stay off. And honestly, John, I can't believe we're saying this. We are months removed from a national title. But, I think Ryan Day has to beat Michigan this year to stay off the hot seat going into next year.
Wild, but yeah, I mean, to a point, yeah. I don't think he would actually get fired, but I think if he loses to Michigan, again, yeah, man. I mean, I think the conversation's going to start up. There's going to be people who are just not satisfied with that, which is again, we love that. That's amazing. That's incredible. Yeah. That's a thing.
Oh yeah,
but
absolutely, and I get it. It's your biggest rival. You've been better than them on the field most, half the time at least recently. You should have been winning half the time, not losing, 4 in a row and being 1-4 against them. Like, or what is he? 1-5 against them? Something like that. 1-4, 1-5.
Yeah.
Yeah, not great. John, what are your thoughts on the Ohio State University?
Well, it's just, this has to be the top because they've been the top. They've been the cream of the crop for so long. And
Yes.
I just, like you said, with the winning percentages where I came back to, I can't fathom winning that many games and having so few losses.
No, it's crazy
in a conference like the Big Ten. So they just function on a level of their own. And in a way, I mean, you could even consider them even a tier above. Like they're in their own
tier. They're their own tier. Sure.
In a way.
If we were going to make 5 tiers, Ohio State would be in tier 1 and then it would be everybody else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and I know some people might argue against that, but in like the last 15 years at least, that's where they live, and they're just looking down on the rest of us. So congratulations, Buckeyes fans. That's why I can never get, whenever I see a Buckeye fan get upset or like complain about anything, I either have to laugh and roll my eyes, or I'm just like shaking my head, just like, what are you doing? What do you really have to be upset about?
It's like when like a rich like Hollywood celebrity gets mad about something stupid and you're just like, could you? And they're like, oh, I can't even go out in public without people loving me and adoring me. And I was like, that must be so hard.
That's tough.
Must be, you poor thing.
Yeah.
Just awful.
Yep.
All right. Moving on. Let's go to Ann Arbor. We're still in tier 1 and the Michigan Wolverines. So Michigan since 2011 is 128-50. That's a 72% winning percentage. 83-35 in conference. So that's really impressive. Brady Hoke started 11-2 in his first year, John, but he was a disaster after that.
Yeah.
He could not coach at the Big Ten level, which became more and more apparent as the years progressed. I fondly remember his last year when we pounded him for the jug. Just pounded him. That game was never even close. It was, I wanted him to coach at Michigan forever. But then Hoke got fired. Enter Jim Harbaugh, who immediately improved Michigan from 5 wins to 10, which was impressive. Then Harbaugh rattled off a lot of really great years. He stumbled a little bit during 2019 and the 2020 COVID season. And I believe he ducked Ohio State. He said that they said they had too much COVID to play Ohio State. I think that Jim Harbaugh knew that if he went out and got crushed by Ohio State, he was going to get fired. Yeah. Yeah. And I think they were like, we can't play. We have too much COVID. I don't, because we cheer for the Gophers. The Gophers played a game against Nebraska down 40 guys. Yeah. 40 scholarship players for COVID. And we still won.
Still won that game.
Still won.
I remember that game.
Oh, I'll never forget it. I couldn't believe it. I was like, well, here's the year Nebraska gets us.
Yep.
Nope. But so a lot of teams had COVID problems is what I'm saying. And the 2019 season was kind of a blip. But around this time, Harbaugh hired Connor Stallions, who helped an already talented team win even more through sign stealing. That said, I think, 21 and 22, Michigan was benefiting from that. I do think in 2023, they were the best team. And they would have gone undefeated with or without Connor Stallions.
Yep.
And they stopped him mid-year. It was still early in the year when it came out, all the stuff. I think it was September or early October when that came out. If I recall correctly, the Connor Stallions thing came to a head. So they didn't have his services after that, and they still continued to just crush teams.
Yep.
So Michigan is tough for me because it's like they'll always have that little asterisk. It's like, yes, you got the national title, but you cheated a little bit and you didn't need to. And that kind of annoys me. But that said, Wolverine fans, Sharon Moore did not do big things in year 1. Yes, he beat Ohio State to end the year in Alabama, and that was impressive. But he was very close to going 6-6.
Oh yeah,
ended up 8-5, but he was very close to going 6-6. So I just think is Sherrone Moore, can he grow to be as good as Jim Harbaugh? Or is this a Brady Hoke situation? And in a year, and we're going to be sitting here next year wondering if Sherrone Moore is going to get fired, or wondering how soon he's going to get fired, or is it bad enough in year 2 that he does get fired?
Yeah.
Because Michigan's got all their eggs in the basket of a freshman quarterback, not a redshirt freshman, a true freshman who just got to campus.
Yep.
Yeah, he was there for spring ball, and that helps a lot. But it's a dice roll, man, because I believe if Michigan goes 8-5 again, I think Sherrone Moore gets fired.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's fair or not fair, but I just don't think that he survives if they have another season on par with what they just did. I think they need to win, I think they need to win 9 regular season games plus to keep him off the hot seat.
Well, and with their schedule this year, they should, you would think. They have a good shot at it anyways.
Think so? I mean, they do have to play. The question is, how good do you think Oklahoma is?
Well, I'm not sold that Oklahoma is going to be massively improved, but
no, me either.
The threat with Oklahoma is the desperation.
Yes.
That's
and you lose those generational defensive tackles in Graham and Grant.
Yes.
Oklahoma with John Mateer, they're going to want to run the ball.
Yep.
So is Michigan, can they reload on the defensive line like they usually do?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to know, I think, against Oklahoma. If they can, if Oklahoma can run the ball, that's a bad sign.
Yep. Yeah.
If Michigan stops Oklahoma from running the ball, that's a good sign, and we're going to know that right away in week 2.
Yeah, I mean, as far as Michigan goes, is like where their program is ranked right now. Obviously, they deserve to be in number 1 because of just their sustained success and their ability to recruit, and Jim Harbaugh doing what Jim Harbaugh did. They deserve it. As much as you may have an issue with what happened with Connor Stallions and whatnot, at the end of the day, like we've said multiple times, making the point that they didn't need to cheat. That team was going to bulldoze anyone who got in their way.
Historically great team.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the best teams I've seen, especially on the line of scrimmage, I've seen in, I don't know, years, decades.
John, that's the best team I've ever seen in person.
It was amazing. Yeah.
In person. And I've seen some Ohio State teams that were, but that Michigan team was the best team I've personally ever seen in person.
Yeah. They were just dominant and shoved
in every
you around
facet.
Where they wanted.
In every facet.
Yeah. So they deserve to be there. As far as, I don't want to say anything as far as just after 1 year of Sherrone Moore of like where their program is necessarily, like they should be scared of dropping down to a second tier. No, like they'll be fine even if they do fire Sherrone Moore. Like they're not going anywhere as far as tiers. Like they'll stay in tier 1 until.
We lost John for a second. But I'm sure he'll be back. But I agree, Michigan and Ohio State, they're not going anywhere. They have the resources. They have the infrastructure. They have, the recruiting. They have all the things you need to succeed. So Michigan, it's weird that they cheated, but they didn't have to. Oh, John's back. Great.
Sorry. Yeah.
No worries.
Just like cut out all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Anyway, I don't know where you were heading off. But
I kind of finished your point for you.
Yeah. I'm sure you know exactly what we're on the same page with Michigan. So
yeah, they're not going away. Michigan and Ohio State are the surest bets in the Big Ten. They have been our whole lives. They continue to be.
Yep.
And I think you make a good point. With or without Sherrone Moore, they're going to be fine. All right. Should we go to Eugene and talk about the Ducks?
Yeah.
John, now granted, we have to keep in mind, I have Oregon in my own rankings. They're both in tier 1. I have Ohio State above Oregon, but their resumes are very close. Ohio State did it though. They've won a couple natties, and Oregon hasn't. And also Ohio State's played in the tougher conference, being in the Big Ten. Well, most of these years, Oregon was in the pack.
Yeah. That
said, it's pretty impressive. Since 2011, Oregon is 138-32. That's an 81% winning percentage. They are 91-31 in conference play. So for every 3 conference games they win, they only lose 1.
Wow.
Which is, pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
John, Chip Kelly was unstoppable in 2011. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if Chip Kelly had stayed at Oregon and never gone to the NFL. I think Oregon would have won a national title by now if he had stayed. I really do. That's how great he had things rolling in Eugene. For our younger fans, you think of Chip Kelly as like a guy at UCLA doing okay, or like as an offensive coordinator. Man, there was a time when Chip Kelly was the biggest thing in college football, and offensively, he was ahead of everyone schematically. He was ahead of everyone. He just was. That's why he got plucked from D3 to be Oregon's OC and then became Oregon's head coach. So Chip Kelly takes his talents to the NFL. Enter Mark Helfrich, who was promoted from within. Helfrich did really well when he had Chip Kelly's recruits, but when he ran out of those, he fell off a cliff, went 4-8, and got fired. The Willie Taggart debacle lasted exactly 1 season and was a bit of a circus. Did you remember the Willie Taggart at Oregon? I had forgotten Willie Taggart coached a year at Oregon.
No, I did forget. Yeah.
I had totally forgotten that he was there for a year and that it was a circus and he left. For Florida State, which was also a circus because Willie Taggart was a con man, not a football coach. But it was only 1 year, so he didn't have time. He kind of luckily didn't have enough time to tank the program even worse.
Mm-hmm.
Then comes Mario Cristobal. Cristobal rebuilt what Helfrich and Taggart destroyed, and he did a great job. When he went home to Miami, that left the door open for Dan Lanning, who won double-digit games in years 1 and 2, before winning the whole Big Ten Conference in year 3. Yeah, they got crushed by national champ Ohio State in the playoff, but it still was an absolute dream 13-0 Big Ten championship season.
Yep.
I hope Oregon fans appreciate what a big deal winning the Big Ten is. It's a really big deal. It's really hard for anyone not named Ohio State or Michigan to win the Big Ten ever.
Yeah. I'm not sure they do because they don't have anything to compare it to.
I know.
So
I know.
But
I don't think they do, but they should.
Yes. Yeah.
And when they go a few years without winning it, they'll remember. They'll be like, that was pretty special, wasn't it? I think they'll eventually look back and think that was pretty special to walk into a league and win it in year 1.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree, their fans probably don't appreciate it because they've been really spoiled, especially in Oregon. Especially the last 15, 18 years. Oregon's been really, really, really good. So I think, Oregon, as long as Phil Knight's alive, Oregon's going to be in tier 1.
Mm-hmm.
My only question is when he dies, how much money does he actually leave them? Because a lot of guys, because that's kind of what happened to Oklahoma State with Mike Gundy, right? Mike Gundy won a ton. And then T. Boone Pickens died. And he still gave some money in his estate or whatever, but it's not the same as being able to go to T. Boone or Phil Knight and be like, hey, we need this quarterback, or we need this cornerback, or we need this assistant coach. I need some money. Like, pay up, please. Like, they don't, once somebody's dead, it's not the same. You know, you're going to get some money from their estate, but I don't think Phil Knight, I would be surprised if he left Oregon enough money to remain a tier 1 school.
Mm-hmm.
So, John, Oregon's interesting because I think they're a sure bet to stay here as long as Phil Knight's alive.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think there's a chance they could fall off after Phil Knight dies.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the way we've seen Oklahoma State fall off in recent years.
Yeah.
Without T. Boone up there. So Oregon fans, Oregon fans, I would raise a glass to Phil Knight. I would say a prayer for him and his continued health because he's been your program. Oregon was nothing before Nike and Phil Knight. They were nothing. They were a historic afterthought. They were terrible. There's not a lot of talent in the state. It's not very easy to get to. Like, it's hard to win at such an out of the way place that's not in a talent bet unless you have a giant monetary advantage.
Yes.
So Oregon's interesting to me, John. And I'll tell you what, I hope, Phil Knight, I hope he lives a long time, but I will be so curious to see what happens in a post-Knight reality.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Oregon belongs there right now. What they've done in the last 15 years obviously proves that. They've had great coaching, they've had wonderful recruiting, all of that due to the fact that they have their pockets are so deep.
And they had the uniform thing for a while. They had the coolest uniforms.
Yep.
I would argue that they're not as cool anymore because everyone does lots of alternate unis now. So it's not unique anymore the same way.
They're also not as cool because far too often Oregon doesn't even wear their own school colors. So
they don't wear the colors. They wear black and pink all the time.
And that is the lamest thing for any school to do, is not to wear their school colors in some way, shape, or form. I'm not saying you can't accent them with other colors, but like, if you don't have them at all on your uniform, what are you even doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
So, but that's not the point. Oregon, absolutely a powerhouse of a program right now. And I think, for the most part, for the foreseeable future, in my opinion, I do wonder as well what happens when Phil Knight dies. I don't think it would be an immediate drop off, but you could see in in a 5 to 10 year span, them becoming more of a middle of the pack team, So, yeah.
But you know what? Phil Knight could also live another 20 years. So and as long as he's around, checks are going to keep clearing.
Absolutely. And who knows? Yeah. And by then, who knows? Maybe he's built it into a sustainable program that can continue on its own and all that. So that's
like in Ohio State. Yeah. The question is, when he leaves, are they more like an Ohio State or more like what they used to be?
Yeah.
And that'll be interesting to track as we go. But Oregon tier 1, going to stay tier 1 for the foreseeable future. For sure. All right. Next, let's go to our last tier 1 team. And we're going to lose some people right now when they find out it's not USC. It is Penn State. Going to Happy Valley, talking about the Nittany Lions.
Mm-hmm.
Penn State since 2011 is 125-55. That's a 69% winning percentage with an 80-41 conference record. So their winning percentage in conference is actually almost as high as their out of conference, which shows that Penn State's had some high profile out of conference losses, which I know. And John, in 2011, Joe Paterno was still head coach at Penn State.
Wild.
In year 1 of our rankings. How crazy is that?
Wow.
That feels like a million years ago.
It does. Yeah. Holy cow.
Yeah, he was fired in disgrace and died shortly after that season. Remember? I think he died. He might have died even during the season still, because he got fired in disgrace because he said, "This is going to be my last year." And they're like, "You're never coaching another game."
Yeah.
And then he died. And I'm sure that killed him. But I'm sure that's a big part of what killed him. But at the same time, and it's really sad he ended that way. But he was also really guilty and needed to be relieved of his duties because countless child sexual assaults were perpetrated under his nose by former defensive coordinator Jerry Sandusky.
Yeah.
So whether or not Paterno knew he had to go, but it just shows you how fast college football moves that, in the life of our rankings, Joe Paterno was still head coach and still winning games.
That's wild.
Yeah. Anyway, post Paterno, Bill O'Brien came in and righted the ship. He had scholarship reductions, so he didn't do great, but he put a foundation in place in 2 tumultuous rebuilding seasons. He also revolutionized their strength and conditioning program. John, before that, I don't know if you know this, but when Joe Paterno was there, they were still using machines from the 80s, like exercise machines. And everyone else is doing Olympic lifts, is doing squats and cleans and deadlifts. And, that's what everyone else is doing. That's how you get strong, is doing those big Olympic. If you're trying to put on muscle mass and size, you're doing those big, high velocity, Olympic lifts.
Yep.
And Joe Paterno wasn't doing any of that, as you'll remember, his teams late in his tenure were kind of soft up front.
Yeah.
They weren't the tough And I think it's because he had such a bad strength and conditioning program that he had never updated because he didn't think he had to. It's crazy. It's crazy that Joe Paterno let so much stuff go the way he let it go. It's crazy. Anyway, Bill O'Brien changed all that. He changed the whole entire weight room as soon as he got the job, which immediately made Penn State more competitive because they were actually in this century and not when it comes to training. And then enter James Franklin. James Franklin took a couple years to build up momentum, but since James Franklin got things going, they haven't missed a beat. He's won double-digit games 6 times since 2016. Last year, they had a monster season, making the Big Ten title game and winning 2 playoff games before narrowly losing in the semis to eventual runner-up Notre Dame. Penn State was 1 good pass and 1 kick from making the national title game. So they were so close. And now with the high-paid staff and returning production, they have the pedigree to make a legit national title run again this year. In fact, I think they're, right now, a lot of people have Penn State ranked number 1.
Yep.
And I think there's good reason why.
Yep.
What do you have to say about Penn State, John?
I mean, again, this is a program that had built-in sustainability. Even after everything that happened with Joe Paterno, you saw there wasn't much of a fall off. There was a couple rough years, but overall they were right back into being competitive and at a high level. And that's where they've stayed. Yes, they haven't gotten over that hump of being able to, win the Big Ten since 2016, which James Franklin did.
Yes, he did win a Big Ten title. We can't forget that.
He did. And I know that they're still in the shadow of Michigan and Ohio State, but you can't deny the fact that this is consistently like you're guaranteed basically 10 wins with Penn State. And that's crazy. That's amazing. Like that's something that a lot of teams cannot rely on.
And they were close last year, man.
Yep,
they went toe to toe with Oregon in that Big Ten title game.
Yep.
They went toe to toe with Notre Dame in that semifinal game. They won 2 playoff games. Like Penn State had a really good year.
Oh yeah.
And this year they should be even better. And now they've added Jim Knowles as defensive coordinator to go with Andy Kotelnicki as offensive coordinator I believe they have the most expensive pair of coordinators in college football.
Oh, I'm sure.
And the best too.
Yep.
They have the best. So it's now or never, man. If Penn State can't win the Natty this year, then I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you.
But I like their chances, though. I like their chances a lot, and it's going to be fun. And, John, I got a prediction for you to throw in. I know this isn't a prediction episode, but I've been doing some research, and I think Penn State's going to beat Oregon.
Wow. Okay.
Here's why. They play in September, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oregon has an entirely new offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
They return 1 guy, and he's not even playing the same position. So they have 4 new starters to break in. And man, that takes a few. You know what it is. That takes a few games. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a moment when we can't run the ball in the second quarter against Buffalo this year in the first game where we're going to want to claw our eyes out. Yeah. But it's just going to be our offensive line is getting used to each other and how to play together. And it hasn't fully clicked yet.
Yep.
So I think Penn State is going to get Oregon before it's fully clicked yet.
Yeah, well, we saw last year Oregon, had some scares with early on in the season.
Yes. So. Oregon, Dan Lanning has gotten off to slow starts, actually.
Yeah.
In some games. I remember the game when he played Georgia and just got run off the field.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first game of the year, too. So he's had some slow starts for sure. And against Boise last year, like you said. Right on. All right, John, should we go to tier 2?
Yes.
I was wondering if we could get through this without talking about Wisconsin, but we have to. We got to talk about Wisconsin. All right. Going to Madison. The Badgers have been since 2011 are 123-73. That's a 63% winning percentage. And they're 78-40 in the Big Ten. So it's pretty solid. The crazy thing about Wisconsin, John, is the insane consistency they had pre-Luke Fickell.
Yep.
When Barry was there as AD, under Bielema, under Barry as coach, then under Bielema, under Gary Anderson, and under Paul Chryst, the Badgers were a machine.
Yep.
They won 9+ games almost every single year, won double-digit games several times. Their worst season under Christ was 7-6. Wisconsin fans are potentially looking down the barrel of a second consecutive season worse than that.
Mm-hmm.
John, it's not always the right thing to hire from within, but at this point, if you're a Wisconsin fan, you gotta wonder what would have happened if we had just hired Jim Leonhard and kept that defense. And tried to change the offense. Sure. Try to change the offense. But if we kept the defense that was the bedrock of those teams, that was perennially a top, not just 10 unit, but like a top 5 unit under Leonhard.
They were incredible. They were terrifying every year.
Terrifying, man.
Yeah.
They had linebackers who ran like slot receivers.
Yeah.
Like, it was crazy. Remember when Bucky Irving got caught from behind by Nick Herbig? And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what? I was like, I started to signal touchdown because I saw him break into the open and I saw a linebacker chasing him and then he ran him down for real. And I was like, yeah. Anyway,
we're talking Bucky Irving, by the way, people.
Bucky Irving,
who played for Oregon, who was amazing.
And is now in the NFL.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, but I think
as well.
What?
Is Leo Chanel as well? I mean, like, that was like
Chanel.
He was a game wrecker.
He was awesome.
You could put him anywhere on the field, and he would just take your life away. Like, it was incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. And so they forfeited their offensive and defensive identities at the same time, and it appears to have been a major error because now Wisconsin is going back to running the ball. But I just heard Adam Weber, former Minnesota Golden Gopher quarterback. And he was, he made a point about Minnesota when he was there that I make about Wisconsin now. He said, we started out with this spread offense and we were recruiting to a spread system. And then Brewster, in the middle of his tenure, just randomly fired his offensive coordinator without asking the athletic director first. Ooh, we lost John for a second. I'm sure he'll be back. Fired the athletic director. And hired a new OC. And that new OC wanted to pound the rock.
Mm-hmm.
That was Jed Fish. So we went from a Minnesota spread for 2 years that worked to now we're going to pound the rock and we have to recruit a totally different kind of offensive lineman and totally different kinds of skill players. And, oh, by the way, we didn't have a star running back on the roster. Okay. So now we've got Wisconsin. They spent 3 years essentially recruiting to a spread system. It didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
To an air raid system. It didn't work. And now they're trying to become a power running team again. But they spent years recruiting spread linemen. And now they're back to recruiting power linemen. And, oh, by the way, just like Minnesota didn't when Brewster was there, Wisconsin doesn't have a bell cow running back on the roster that we know of.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying Luke Fickell's Tim Brewster, right? Like, I'm not saying that at all. That's not the comparison I'm trying to make. But what I'm saying is it's hard to change schemes when you have to change the way you recruit to change those schemes. And you don't, as a head coach, you want to rebuild once. You want to have an identity in your mind. You build to it once, and then you just keep building to that. And that's why over time you get better and better because you get better and better to building to that thing. That's been the Kirk Ferentz thing. That's been the PJ Fleck thing. That's been the James Franklin thing, just improving that way. You could even throw Ohio State in there with the way they changed kind of from being a defensive team under Tressel to more of an offensive team under Meyer and Day, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Not that they're still not great on defense, but, their offensive identity changed for sure when Jim Tressel left. I think Wisconsin's in trouble. And I'm with you. I think if you're going to run the air raid, I think Fickell should have said, I'm going to live or die on the air raid.
Yep.
And I think now that he's trying to change philosophies midstream, I just don't think it's great. Yeah. And they're going to have to hope that they brought in, I think Wisconsin brought in like 7 defensive line transfers. That's a lot, man. You better hope you hit on some of those guys, on most of those guys, because the D line was bad last year.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, as far, look, as of right now, Wisconsin is definitely entrenched in tier 2. They should be
Yes.
there. Like we said, everything that Bielema did, everything that Paul Chris did, Gary Anderson, there was success, consistent success, and high level consistent
Yes.
success. So to put them any lower is just not right. But
No.
with the way they are heading under Luke Fickell, and if he doesn't right the ship this year, this could also spell disaster for years to come. This couldn't be an overnight fix. This could, they would have to hope if they had to fire Luke Fickell that they would find the next right hire who could.
And who would that even be? Who would even be the next right hire? I think is the point John was going to make. I don't know. Sorry, people. I don't know why we're having technical issues today, but that's just how it goes sometimes. I'm sure he'll be back in a moment. So yeah, Wisconsin, this is a big year. It's a big year for Fickell. It's a big year for him. John, you're back.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know what's going on with my internet. I apologize, everybody.
No, it's okay. It happens. Yeah. I was going to say I was just telling the people that that's sort of what happens when you're, depending on Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
They're definitely tier 2, but Wisconsin's got to be careful, man. This is a key year for Fickell.
Yep.
Because if he can't turn it around this year, I just don't think it's going to happen.
I agree.
So right on. All right, moving on to tier 2. John, we go to a program with some high highs and some low lows. Let's talk about the Washington Huskies. So since 2011, the Huskies are 116-61. That's a 65% winning rate, so that's pretty solid. They are 75-46 in conference, so that's really good as well. Steve Sarkisian didn't do great at Washington, but he didn't do terrible either. He did just well enough to get the USC job before flaming out there due to his addiction, and I'm glad to see he got another chance at Texas, and he's making the most of it, and he's, that he's sober and happy and all that stuff. That said, Washington was much better under Chris Peterson than they were under Sark.
Mm-hmm.
But then Chris Peterson retired. The Jimmy Lake experiment was a total failure. But then Kalen DeBoer comes in and for 2 years is an overwhelming success, bringing them all the way to the national title game. And then last year, Jed Fish did okay, going 6-6 in a tough rebuilding spot. So, John, Washington has high highs and low lows, man. They're never down and out for long. They're always just around the corner of a great season, even when things look bad. It'll be interesting to see how often we get elite Washington versus average Washington in the new Big Ten.
Yeah.
They are a program I have a hard time projecting, so they are fun to watch. I think they're very securely a tier 2 program, but like from year to year, you don't know if they're going to be tier 2 or 3 or even 1.
Yeah. Yeah, they're a high variance program. And I think they definitely deserve to be in tier 2. I mean, look, they were just in the national title game a couple years ago. They continue to put out excellent teams and have, really good recruiting rankings and all that kind of stuff. So I think that this, as a program, especially over the last 15 years, they deserve exactly to be in tier 2. But like you said, the fact that they're just so high variances, you just don't know where they're going to sit from one year to the next. But I think they've earned the right to be where they are and be on the higher end in the Big Ten.
Yep, I agree. All right, let's go to Iowa City, John, as much as I don't want to.
Who does?
Iowa is 115-64 for a 64% winning percentage since 2011. And John, 75-45 in conference. That's really good. Mm-hmm. That shows that Iowa's losing too many out of conference games because they're doing better in the conference than out of the conference pretty much, which is weird. That's not usually you do better out of the conference than in the conference percentage wise because those are easier games. So Iowa's had some problems out of conference, but what can you say, man? Kirk Ferentz is a wizard who made a Faustian pact with Lucifer himself in the late 90s. Yes, otherwise, it makes no sense how Iowa wins so damn much even without a passing game. And it's been a decade since they had a passing game that was worth a damn.
Yep.
And I'm not even trying to swear right now. Iowa just drives me crazy. And they win so many close games they have no business winning. And they just keep chugging along and outperforming their recruiting rankings at every turn. I mean, that's the thing, man. I know that people are getting impatient with Ferentz. I know that Iowa fans are interested in something else, but you should be careful what you wish for.
Yep.
Because his magic pixie dust, there's no guarantee it stays and remains there after he's gone.
Yep.
Because it's been incredible, man. It's been an incredible run. I mean, he was this close to making the 4-team playoff, during that stretch. I mean, he's, that close to winning a Big Ten title, runner up in the Big Ten for the Big Ten title several times. I mean, it's been impressive.
Yes, it has. Yeah.
Let me go wash my mouth out with bleach.
And look, and you got to give Kirk Ferentz full credit for all of this. He is that program. He built it. I know he took over for Hayden Fry. It was in really good shape. But he's
done better than Hayden Fry.
He's done better than Hayden Fry, and he's maintained that success. Like it's so difficult to do what he's done there. And so I think, without Kirk Ferentz, we don't know where Iowa would be. And I think that. And also a coach that you had that was willing to stay there as long as he was.
He turned down NFL jobs to stay at Iowa.
Yes.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
In the 2000s. NFL jobs. He could have coached the Chiefs. He could have coached a couple other places. And he was like, no, because I don't want to get fired.
Yep.
He was smart. He saw what happened to Spurrier. He saw what happened to Nick Saban. And he said, no, thanks.
Mm-hmm. So, you've been lucky, Iowa, for having that, in that consistency. And we've talked about that as far as programs that are more developmental. It's really crucial to have a head coach that sticks around. And
yes. So,
and Iowa's the perfect example of that. So yeah, man, they deserve to be in tier 2 solidly. And I just am curious. I know we're talking about from now to, or the last 15 years, but what happens when Kirk Ferentz leaves? That's going to be another interesting one to follow. Is Iowa going to maintain, for the long term, or are they going to go back to, what they were pre Hayden Fry, which was not good.
Which was not much. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, dude. Interesting stuff. Mm-hmm. All right, let's go to East Lansing. Talk about the Michigan State Spartans. Man, speaking of highs and lows, here comes Sparty.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan State is 108-67 since 2011. That's a 62% winning percentage. They are 66-53 in conference. Mark D'Antonio built an absolute juggernaut in East Lansing.
Yes, he did.
And they made the 4-team playoff in year one, or sorry, not in year one, but 1 year, and won a ton throughout the first decade of his tenure, a ton. Then things started to go south a bit, and he eventually got fired after a 7-6, 4-5 season. And John, you got to wonder if Sparty regrets that firing.
I would.
Because since then, it's been a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Mel Tucker had one good year, but he couldn't sustain a roster or keep his dick in his pants, and he got fired for sexual harassment.
Mm-hmm.
Enter Jonathan Smith. Smith did a great job at his alma mater, Oregon State, but it took several years. I'm not sure there's that much patience in East Lansing for a long rebuild. I think Smith really needs to show improvement this year and at least make a bowl game to quiet the doubters, or he might be on a really hot seat entering next fall.
Yep. I'm with you. I think Sparty deserves to be there. All, full credit to D'Antonio. I mean, that's who built that program up. And
what a wizard he was.
Oh, he was amazing. And his defenses were terrifying. They were just so violent and so much fun to watch. I think, as of now, Sparty should be in tier 2, but again, with it's now been a few years, and is this sustainable? And hopefully Jonathan Smith can do what he did at Oregon State. But of course, he's got a little shorter leash than he had there. So we'll see. As of right now, they're still in pretty good spot. I think they're recruiting really well. I think they're fine as far as that goes. They're still a very recognizable team. Everyone knows the Spartans, and so they're not a helmet school, but they're on a lot of people's radar. So yeah, solid program.
My question is, what's the identity for Jonathan Smith? Mark D'Antonio, you knew what you were getting. Yep. You were going to get a team that could run the ball. You're going to get a team that played lights out defense and was flat out better than you. Their secondary was flat out better than your receivers. Flat out better.
Yep.
It was the no fly zone, and it was real.
Yep.
So who is Sparty going to be under Jonathan Smith?
Mm-hmm.
What is their identity? I think it's about having, playing good defense and having good quarterback play. Mm-hmm. That seems to be what Jonathan Smith is trying to build.
Yeah.
So it's kind of all up to your boy, Aiden Childs, isn't it?
It is. He's going to do it. It's going to happen.
It could happen. It could happen, dude. If it happens, we might be real scared when Sparty comes to town later this year.
True.
Might be nervous. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm hoping it doesn't happen, but I understand that there's a good chance it will because he showed a lot of stuff in year one.
Yep.
In the Big Ten. And I think Aiden Childs will probably be improved. My question is, man, he's kind of got that Ethan Kaliakmanis thing where he throws everything hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does he show any touch? Can he throw a screen pass?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's my only question with Aiden Childs. Can he can he throw a seam route and throw it over the linebacker, but under the safety?
Yep.
Can he do that stuff? Or is he just rocket arm, everything's 80 miles an hour? Yeah. So that's what I'm going to be watching with Aiden Childs to see if he's improved that aspect of his game.
Yeah.
Right on. All right. We're going to our last tier 2 team, John, and it's the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Minnesota is 98-76 since 2011. That's a 56% winning percentage, 54-65 in conference. John, Minnesota was in bad shape in 2011 when Jerry Kill took the program over.
Yep.
Tim Brewster had taken everything that Glenn Mason built over a decade and run it into the ground and destroyed it, leaving a smoking crater where our program was. So it took a while to rebuild. But by 2013, he won 8 games again in 2014. Then he had to, after 2015, had to retire because of his epilepsy. Tracy Claeys led us to one glorious 9-4 season in which we were this close to getting James Franklin fired and winning 10 games. This close. Oh, we've had a lot of games with Penn State that have been, we've had a lot of knockdown. Penn State gives us more credit than most Pelmet schools because they know. They've played us enough.
Yep.
They played us enough and had enough trouble with us. They know.
Yep.
It's not going to be a walk in the park. Enter PJ Fleck. John, it was a slow build. PJ won just 5 games in year 1, but in year 2, he started out the year 2-4, but ended the year 4-2 to get to 6-6. Win that bowl game in convincing fashion. I think that was Paul Johnson's last game.
Mm-hmm.
And we made the triple option. I believe PJ Fleck said it was like stopping the triple option was being on an assembly line and that you have to do the same job over and over and be happy about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked, man. It worked. I mean, they scored 6 points. I think it was 34-6, something like that.
Yeah.
It was a beating. And then the Gophers were off and running, man. Went 10-2, 11-2 technically in 2019-20. Finished top 10 in the AP poll. Awesome season. Best season since the 60s. And then COVID hit right when we were going to take advantage on the recruiting trail of that awesome season.
Yep.
And it hurt us. It set us back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But PJ persevered. He won 9 games again in 21 and 22. Had a bad year in 23, bounced back in 24, and here we are.
Yep.
And it's just been a steady build, John. Jerry Kill built a program, and PJ has gradually built on top of that a program that's much better and more competitive and recruits better than what Jerry Kill had built.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, Minnesota they're the last one that slots in at tier 2, but I think they very much deserve to be there. And the arrow, I feel like, is pointing up, man. And you can tell PJ is confident, and PJ never looks this confident if he doesn't, it's not fake with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He'll let you know if he's a little nervous about the team.
Yeah.
He did in 2023. He's like, remember, he was like, we're going to be young, but it's going to be okay.
Yep.
And then it kind of wasn't okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we still went 6-7. It wasn't a total disaster.
Yeah.
But he let us know. We knew.
Yep.
And everything he's signaling this year, I'm like, oh, we're going to be pretty good.
Yep.
So yeah, dude, PJ. And I also think, Tracy Claeys had 1 year as the interim, but Minnesota essentially has had 2 coaches in 15 years. Mm-hmm. And Fleck's been here for almost a decade now.
Yep.
So I think that continuity has allowed Minnesota to go from being what they were under Mason, which was kind of an average bowl team, to a more competitive team with the better teams in the conference, a team that wins a little more often, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's that consistency of having the same head coach, same system, having that same leadership, despite the fact that, he's going to leave every year. He just happens to magically stay. So.
But the assistant, and I think it's, Fleck's got such a life program that I think it's why it doesn't hurt us as much when assistants leave.
Yep.
Because everything's so regimented and everything's about enthusiasm. And so it's easy for a new coach to come in, pick it up, learn it's like the players don't have to adjust to the new coaches. The coaches have to adjust to the system.
Yes.
And because the coaches have to adjust to PJ's system, they can kind of hand off the baton through coaching changes. Mm-hmm. And we saw it, man. Everybody thought the wheels were going to fall off when Joe Rossi left. Corey Heatherman came out, was better.
Yep.
And now we got Danny Collins, and I'm not saying he's going to be better than Corey Heatherman, but I think he could be just as good.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And he's younger than us. How weird is that?
It's very weird.
I know, dude.
But Danny Collins has also been a part of this program and PJ Flex for since Western Michigan.
Western Michigan. He's been with him 13 years.
Yeah. So nobody knows it better than him.
Yeah. No, nobody knows. Nobody knows it. And he was, I'm glad he was there for a year of Heatherman, because I think going forward, we're going to want to attack more than we did under Rossi. Mm-hmm. I think the way Joe Rossi's a great defensive coordinator, but I kind of think that the way he plays is so dependent on the offense making mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think as quarterback play continues to improve, that's a harder way to play defense.
I agree.
So I like where we're headed, where things are going. I know we're both Minnesota fans, man, but I'm really optimistic about where the Gophers are. I think they're in a good spot in the year 2. And I think we're going to see, I think we've yet to see the best of the PJ Fleck era.
Yeah.
I truly believe that.
I agree.
All right. Should we go to tier 3 and start making people upset?
Oh, I'm sure they're all ready. If they haven't figured
they're not already upset. Yeah. All right. Let's start with UCLA. Now, John, you had originally put them in tier 4, but they've won a lot more than I thought. And it's the Pac-12, so I don't give them quite as much credit because the Pac has not been as strong as the Big Ten year to year. But UCLA, since 2011, 93-73. That's a 56% winning percentage, 63-61 in conference. So honestly, man, that's better than I thought UCLA would be. They definitely had more success than I thought they had under Jim Mora, particularly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Chip Kelly also, man, I know he destroyed that program because he just quit recruiting. But before he quit recruiting, he was doing pretty well.
Yeah.
He had 3 really bad years to start, and then he had 3 very good years before he, bailed. Mm-hmm. And now you've got Deshaun Foster, who, he started out 1-5 last year, but he ended up winning 4 out of his last 6 games. And Deshaun Foster, I don't think he has a higher ambition. I think Deshaun Foster loves UCLA. He wants to be UCLA's head coach.
Yep.
And I think that's important because you can build some continuity there. So UCLA is in tier 3 for now. But if Deshaun Foster stays if Tino Sunseri works out at OC, I think there's reasons to be optimistic about UCLA, but I also think that just they've been up and down enough and volatile enough, and enough of their wins came in the Pac, which wasn't as strong as the Big Ten most years, and so I had to have them tier 3.
Yeah,
but they weren't. But they definitely couldn't be tier 4. They've won too much.
Yeah. Well, and that was, I guess like my why I kind of put them lower than what they should have been was just the fact that they were in the Pac-12. But yeah, I mean, everything you just said, obviously makes a lot of sense. So, and I do think that their ceiling is higher than what people are aware of, and I think they could definitely, move up a tier or get close, at some point, as long as Deshaun Foster continues to improve, which I think he can. I really do. I believe in Deshaun Foster at this point. I really do.
I think he's legit for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Moving on. Should we go to Lincoln, talk about the Cornhuskers?
Mm-hmm.
So the Cornhuskers, since 2011, John, are 87-85, a 50% winning percentage. It's slightly over, but it's basically 50% even.
Yeah.
53-67 in conference.
Yeah.
And John, what's crazy about that is that when they joined the league, things were going well.
Yeah.
Like they had Bo Pelini had things rolling. So their first 4 years in the league, they went 9 wins, 10 wins, 9 wins, 9 wins. And then they fired Bo Pelini.
9 wins just wasn't enough, man.
Not 9, 10, 9, 9. I mean, yeah, man. They tried to bring in Mike Riley, and Mike Riley had one good season, but otherwise his other 2 were a disaster. And then they brought in Scott Frost, and that was a total disaster. Yeah. Everything came off the rails. Scott Frost reportedly was basically I'm not going to say high functioning because I don't think he was high functioning. He was a medium functioning alcoholic trying to nurse an addiction and also coach a Big Ten football team. And it turned out that didn't go very well. And he couldn't decide what he wanted to be either. He couldn't keep players around, guys. He just couldn't inspire loyalty. It was a total train wreck. And then Matt Rule came in and everyone's like, all right, now we're turning it around. Now things are really going to happen. And it's gone okay. He went 5-7 in year 1, which wasn't great. Went 7-6 last year, but still, once again, went just 3-6 in the conference last year. So, which is what he went and did into 2023. So, yes, Nebraska won a couple more games last year, but they were out of conference games, not in conference. They hadn't shown any improvement yet. So, John, I got into it with some Husker fans. I had the audacity to say that you can't make a list of the most delusional fan bases without including Nebraska, just because they always feel like they're about to get back to 1995. They can feel it. It's about to happen every single year. Yep. And I love Nebraska fans. I love you. I admire your commitment to your program. We have several friends of the pod, shout out people like at Peter Meister, at Matt Rule's Smock, at Patrick Connor, right? And so there are some Husker fans we like a lot on Twitter and we enjoy.
Absolutely.
But they tried telling me, even Matt Rule Smock, he said, we used to be delusional. We're not anymore. And I was like, but aren't you still telling me that you're dark horse? Aren't your fans still telling me that you're a dark horse playoff contender this year?
They have been for like 12 years now, I think. Right?
Well, every year. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's always Groundhog Day in Lincoln. And I actually think they're going to be better this year. Like, I think they're going to win more games. I could see them winning 7-8 regular season games. But I don't think they're going to go 10-2, man.
No, and honestly, it's a lot of the fans of continuing that or perpetuating that continued, idea that they're going to return to form of 1990s Nebraska Cornhusker football. But it's also, you got to blame the media too, man. Like they keep feeding into it. And like, if the media was more honest, and not just looking for clicks and pandering, there'd be more realistic expectations. And I think the expectations should still be high. I'm not trying to say that.
Absolutely.
Like you absolutely should be hoping for the best and all that, and it's not to say like that's an impossibility to reach those heights ever again. But, it's going to take a while. Like, and again, like, the big, Nebraska's not in the Big 12 anymore. It is in the Big 10. That a thing that some of the fans seem to forget about for some reason. I don't know, after this many years, how you don't still realize that. But Matt Rule, I believe him. I like Matt Rule.
Yeah, he's a great coach. Great coach.
He's a great coach. I like him as a person. Like, I think I think that like he can potentially bring this team to that level that they want to be at. Not maybe the national title, but I could see a 9-10 win season here and there,
yeah, absolutely. Make the playoff. Sure.
Yep. So I think finding the ability to adjust your expectations is what I would suggest. That's where I'm at. But
I think the year for Nebraska is 2026.
Yeah.
I just don't think this is the year they have the big push. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And I know Matt Rule did it in year 3 at Temple and year 3 at Baylor. But as you just said, that wasn't the Big 10.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I just question, here's the two things I question. The reason why I don't think Nebraska is going to be like a 9-10 win team this year is, how does the defensive line look without Nash Hutmacher?
Yep.
And who are your skill players I'm supposed to be scared of? I know Dylan Raiola is a decent quarterback.
Yep.
But who am I supposed to be scared of at running back or wide receiver? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, we'll find out. But
right now, I don't see a Kenny Bell at wide receiver.
No.
I don't see an Amir Abdullah at running back.
No.
You know what I mean?
Like, we haven't seen that. We haven't seen that kind of talent in Nebraska in a long time.
In a while. Yeah. So that's what I want to see. So Nebraska, you're currently in tier 3. I think you could easily get back to tier 2.
Yep. Yeah.
For sure. But you're going to have to get to tier 2 for a while before you can think about tier 1.
Yep.
Is what I would say.
I
but
agree.
That said, I do think Nebraska, if we do this again in 5 years and Matt Rule's still there, I think there's a good chance that Nebraska would be a tier 2 team by then.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we have Northwestern and the Wildcats. 88 and 85, so just a 51% winning percentage. 54 and 66 in conference. John, it is crazy. The roller coaster ride that was life under Pat Fitzgerald. 6 wins, 10 wins, 5 wins, 5 wins, 10 wins, 7 wins, 10 wins, 9 wins, 3 wins, 7 wins. And that's 7 and 2. That was the COVID year.
Yeah.
Then 3 and 9, then 1 and 11. Then he got fired for stuff off the field. But I think Fitzgerald was going to have a bounce back year that year because David Braun walked right in and won 8 games. But then last year happened and David Braun went 4 and 8. John, I think, you and I have a lot of scar tissue around Northwestern. We've lost some games to them. I can't believe we lost. Over the years. And I have a healthy respect for them and fear of the fact. I remember when Pat Fitzgerald was there, I remember reading an interview with an anonymous defensive coordinator. And he was like, Northwestern's the only team in the Big Ten smart enough for their defensive backs to make post-snap reads. Like they change their coverage post-snap based on what the offense is doing.
Wow.
That's hard.
Yeah.
My point is Fitzgerald had a well-oiled machine.
Yep.
And they fell off a lot, but that's because it's hard to recruit at Northwestern. And you don't have a home field advantage because no one goes to your games. That said, man, I think the Northwestern job became a lot harder with the transfer portal.
Yeah.
They actually have okay NIL because the same people, the Ryan family, who build everything else at Northwestern, also contribute to NIL. So, they have enough money to keep their players. Like you can't, they're not like Purdue or Maryland. You can't just walk into Evanston and say, I'll have a left tackle and a wide receiver, please. Like that's not how it works. Northwestern actually has some money, but they don't have all the fans.
Yep.
And it's really hard to get admitted to Northwestern as a player. So I think Northwestern is the third hardest job in the Big Ten right now. I think the only jobs that are harder than Northwestern are Maryland and Purdue, because Maryland and Purdue don't have the NIL, and Northwestern at least has some NIL.
Yeah.
But I think it's a job that's gotten harder, and the fact that David Braun went with Mike Wright and Jack Lausch at quarterback last year, and now it's going to be Preston Stone, makes me worry about how this year is going to go. And I hope they don't fire Braun if this is a bad year, because I do think Northwestern, it's always going to be a good year for a bad year. And so like you have 2 bad years in a row. Maybe you had a good year. Maybe you have 2 bad years in a row. Then maybe you have another good year. You know, it's always kind of going to be like that at Northwestern.
Yeah, I think Braun deserves at least one more shot if it doesn't go well this year. They were patient with Fitzgerald.
Yes.
And I think that they should be patient with Braun. Now, if the same thing happens next year, okay, I understand. But at a program like that, he deserves at least 3 solid years, in my opinion. So
totally.
But Northwestern is always, you know, they can be scrappy, man. They can jump up and bite you sometimes, and that's where, you know, you and I have learned that lesson over the years, and this is a program that you can't, just like any Big Ten team, really, you know, but Northwestern seems to be one that can kind of get you and give you a scare or beat you when you're not expecting it. So,
yeah. All right, John, I just realized we have 19 minutes left, so we got to get everyone else into this.
Let's do it.
So let's move on. We're going to our last tier 3 team. That's Illinois. The Illinois Illini gone 69-100 for a 41% win percentage, 36-84 in conference. So here's what I'll say, John. Ron Zook left a smoking crater behind where a program was supposed to be.
Yep.
Tim Beckman couldn't rebuild. Bill Cubitt was an interim. Lovie Smith was so far out of his depth in the Big Ten that the Illini were terrible, largely terrible for all of that. But then came Brett Bielema. 5 wins in year 1, then 8, then 5 again, but then 10 last year. And I think there are going to be down years under Bielema because Illinois is a basketball school, and it's hard to win there every year. It just is. Because you don't have the best NIL. But you're going to have years, good years, like last year and this year, where you can win big. So I think, man, yeah, they're a tier 3 team, but as long as Bielema's there, I consider them much more of a tier 2 team.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think right now, just based on the history that in the time we've allotted, that they are a tier 3, but I think they're moving on there. They're moving up. As long as Bielema's there, they will be a tier 2 team.
Yes.
Solidly.
Yes. He's already got them there.
Yeah.
He's already overcome that. So Bielema has been fantastic. You got to give him all kinds of credit for that. Right on. All right, let's move on to tier 4, John. To all these fan bases in tier 4, let me say I love you, and you've been through a lot, and we're here for you.
Yep.
We'll start with Indiana, who is on top of the world right now. But John, since 2011, Indiana, even including last year, 70-128, a 35% winning percentage, 35, 38-81 in conference. The Hoosiers couldn't get it done under Tom Allen, couldn't get it done under Kevin Wilson. Those guys are both pretty good coaches, honestly. Yep. Indiana was a really tough job, but now Indiana has invested money in the program. They just outspent USC to keep a strength coach. So Indiana, man, they were asleep, but they're awake now. They're awake. They went 11-2 last year, and I don't think they're going anywhere. As long as Curt Cignetti's there, I think they're going to be good. But not just that, I do think the program they're more committed. They're putting the resources in. They're committed to winning in football in a way they weren't before. So I'm really happy for the Indiana football fans who have hung in there because they've suffered through a lot of bad football. But you got to give a credit. You know, they're on the rise. They had a huge year last year. They're probably going to be good again this year. I mean, it's a renaissance in Indiana football, and I'm excited for Hoosiers. You know, Indiana's kind of my second Big Ten team, you know, because of my significant other. I've got the Hoosier hat. I've been to games at Memorial Stadium, including watching the Gophers win big there. But yeah, man, Indiana, they got it rolling now. And I think they're going to be a tough out as long as Cignetti's in there. And I also think even when Cignetti leaves, I think they've now are more committed to the program and they're going to do better going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they're necessarily going to be condemned to stay in Tier 4 anymore. I think that they can definitely rise up over the next few years as long as Cignetti's there. And like you said, with the commitment to...
They could be more of a Tier 2 team, really.
They could be. Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think it's very possible going forward. They're more of a Tier 2 team on average. Cool. All right, let's go across the state from Bloomington to West Lafayette. Purdue. John, Purdue's been worse than I thought. Since 2011, 63 and 106 for just a 37% winning percentage, 39 and 79 in Big Ten play. I think Jeff Brom was so good.
Yeah, he was.
He was great, right? But even Jeff Brom's best season, they finished 8-6. They finished 8-6.
Yeah.
And I think they went 9-4 one year, but that wasn't the year they won the division. What year they won the division, they went 8-6 and got pounded in the Big Ten title game and the bowl game. They've lost a lot, man. They've lost a lot. They've had, some bad coaches. Obviously, Ryan Walters was a bad coach. And Daryl Hazel was a bad coach. Danny Hope was a bad coach. I mean, these are bad coaches. And then Jeff Brom, who's a genius.
Yeah.
So what can Barry Odom do, man? I think, my thing is Purdue's Tier 4 until their NIL gets good enough that they don't get rated every year. That's for them to move up to Tier 3. It's not about what happens on the field. It's not about what happens. It's about whether or not they can raise the money to be competitive. And I hate that that's the world we live in, but that's the world we live in.
Yep. No, it's a reality. I thought they would have been further up in the tier as well. Maybe like, lower end of Tier 3, but because of what Jeff Brom did, I mean, it's tough, man. I would have thought that it would have been a little bit of an easier school to coach at, but it really just isn't. It's tough.
It's a basketball school, man.
Yeah. So, but we've seen it happen at other basketball schools now. Maybe
if they'll commit the money.
If they'll commit
the money.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we need to see Purdue to go. And let's go to another team that also is at the bottom of the league because of the NIL situation, and their roster keeps getting poached. Maryland and the Terrapins. 70 and 97 for a 42% winning percentage, just 34 and 83 in conference. So Maryland, man, I mean, we love Uncle Mike. And you know what? It really looked like he was building stuff for a while.
Yeah.
It did. Because, Randy Edsall going back was not a very good coach. He was not Big Ten ready. DJ Durkin was not a good coach and a jerk and got a kid killed. And Matt Canada was an interim. So Loxley went 3 wins. He went just 3 and 9 and then 2 and 3 in the COVID year. But then he went 7 and 6, 8 and 5, 8 and 5. That was improvement.
Yep.
But then last year they fall off to 4 and 8. And I don't fully blame Locks, man. I think that a lot of it's NIL, but it's also up to the head coach to get the fan base to be excited enough about the team. And I just think when they had Leah Tagovailoa, they needed to break through and win like 9 or 10 games one year.
Yeah.
They needed to do that to get the fans excited, to get the donations coming in. It didn't happen. And now Purdue and Maryland are in the worst spot in our conference, and they just cannot keep their rosters together.
Yep.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. And I think, Maryland, and you and I have talked about this, is they're in a fantastic recruiting bed. Like
oh my goodness,
so many good
I'm
players.
jealous of their recruiting area.
Yeah, but
the DMV.
And obviously, Loxley has been able to recruit really well. He gets some really good skill players in there all the time. But like you said, being able to maintain and keep them and until they commit that kind of money, it's just going to continue to be the same old story. So it's tough. But if they can find the right coach, if the university does commit, Maryland's going to be a dangerous team.
They need a coach who can raise money. Yeah. Period.
Yeah.
I don't even care if he's an average coach. They need a coach who can raise money and keep players. Until they can keep their players. I mean, imagine, man, they got rated for their quarterback, their running back, and their best wide receiver over the offseason. You can't win like that. Nobody can win like that. So, yeah, dude, Uncle Mike's going to get fired, but it's not going to get better until Maryland competes better off the field.
Yeah.
All right. We're down to our last team, I think, and I counted them, so I'm pretty sure this week I'm right, and there's 18, and we're good now.
We did USC?
Yeah, we did. No, we didn't. We forgot them. And they were in tier 3 too, and we just forgot to do them. Okay, we'll do Rutgers and we'll bounce back to USC quick at the end. How did I forget that? Okay. Yeah, weird. All right. Rutgers is our last tier 4 team. 71 and 101, 41% winning percentage, 32 and 82. And man, Rutgers feels like a success story because Greg Schiano was there he went 9-4 in 2011, and then he took off to the NFL. And Kyle Flood did okay, but got fired after a 4-8 season. Chris Ash was a total disaster.
Yeah.
Total disaster. Cratered the program. Terrible hire. Multiple went 0-9 in conference 3 out of 4 years, John. 0-9. 3 out of 4 years.
Yeah.
Brutal. And then came Greg Schiano, and he's just slowly built. 3 wins, 5 wins, 4 wins, 7 wins, 7 wins. They're going to play defense. They're going to run the ball. They're not going to beat themselves. Rutgers is a team I could see getting to tier 3 in the not too distant future.
Yeah, same. I feel the same way. I think they've got it moving in the right direction for sure.
Awesome. Anything else? Any other thoughts about Rutgers before we move on to USC?
I think that, I think again, they're in like a really good area for recruiting. I think that they've shown that their recruiting has been improving a lot as well, in bringing some higher stars, just higher ceiling talent in general. Obviously, we have our questions when it comes to Rob Smith or DC, but I think that Schiano is good enough to maybe right those wrongs. So as long as Schiano's there, man, I feel pretty solid about that.
If Rob Smith can't call the defense, Schiano will just start calling it for him.
Exactly. And therefore, I'm not worried about it.
No, me either. Except for early in the year. I do think those first couple of games
could be.
We'll see. We'll see. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So tier 2, I don't know why I skipped them. I think it's because it was after Wisconsin I had them, so I just got excited. But USC 113 and 63 for a 64% winning percentage, 81 and 41 in conference. So very good, although a lot of that was in the Pac-12, so not quite as strong as the Big Ten. John, Lane Kiffin did well before he left. Steve Sarkisian did not do as well. Clay Helton started out hot, but then ran the program off a cliff. And now we have Lincoln Riley. Riley's first year was great, but he's regressed 2 consecutive years since then. He had a mediocre year with a Heisman Trophy level quarterback, and then that guy went to the NFL, and he had like 4-5 in the Big Ten and have a losing and had to win the bowl game to go 7-6 and have a winning record. So a 6-6 season, 4-5 in the Big Ten. Not ideal.
No,
not ideal. It's interesting because USC continues to recruit at such a high level. And so it's weird when they struggle as much as they have. And it's also weird that Lincoln Riley benched Miller Moss. I can't get over it, man. I just can't get over it. I don't know why he did it. Miller Moss is going to put up video game stats at Louisville this year. You know he is.
Yep.
No, he is.
Yep. I'm with you. As of right now, yes, USC is in tier 2.
Yes.
But I don't know, man. I mean, they seem to be, at least under Lincoln Riley, if they're not careful, they could be bumped down to tier 3.
That's interesting because most people think that they're on the cusp of tier 1 because of the way they're recruiting. But you don't see that, huh?
I mean, I'm not saying it's not possible. It could go either way. Or that it could go up. You know, obviously they've got the money, they've got that all. You know, the NIL, what have you. Like it is possible, but under Lincoln Riley, I don't think so. I think as long as he's there, unless he shows me something, you know, crazy this year, some massive amount of change, I think he's only going to continue to hurt the program. And it does, even if he leaves and they hire somebody else who is hopefully better, will they bounce right back up and possibly get to tier 1 like almost instantly? Yeah, they could definitely do that.
I think that too. Yeah. I think Lincoln Riley's just not the guy.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to ever win in the Big Ten. I don't think he's a good enough coach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was in the Big 12. He just had such a talent advantage.
Yep.
Such a talent advantage. Yep. And now that he doesn't, and he's not going to have it in the Big Ten. They can recruit as well as they want. They're never going to be any better than Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan.
Yeah.
Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Oregon. Yeah. They're never going to. Yes.
Oh, you said Penn State. Yeah.
They're never going to be any better than those teams talent-wise.
No.
So he's going to have to outcoach some people if they want to win at the level that they're expecting to win at.
Yeah.
And he's got to prove to me that he can do it, because last year I saw Mike Loxley outcoach him. I saw PJ Fleck coach circles around him.
Yep.
I saw other coaches, stuff him in a locker.
Yep.
So I gotta see Lincoln Riley show that he's gonna coach school. Bielema did it, right? And I wonder, John, is the best thing for Lincoln Riley to get fired in a couple of years, go to the NFL and learn how to really be a coach and then come back?
Yeah, could be.
Because until he understands that you have to run the ball to win in the Big Ten, I just don't know how much they're gonna win, no matter how talented they are.
Yeah, I'm with you. Totally. Cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, hopefully, nobody gets too crazy upset over this, but if you have issues, you have problems, please contact us, shoot us an email or contact us on Twitter, DM us, whatever. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are. So if you want to find We Live for Saturday, find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. Again, you can find us on Twitter at We Live for B1GSat. You can find Mike here at Alibaba26. You can find me, John, at Norwegian Gopher. And you can email us, We Live for Saturday, b1g@gmail.com. Please follow, like, subscribe, retweet, all that good stuff. We really appreciate it.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you for listening. If you are still here, an hour and 50 going on 8 minutes in a May college football pod, you are a real one, and I love you. You are my favorite person. Please, if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe, as John said, on the YouTube channel. We really appreciate it. And yeah, John, anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
No, that's it, man. This was fun. This was a good time. And please let us know what your thoughts are, what everybody thinks, good, bad, or otherwise.
Yeah.
Love to hear it.
Absolutely. And if you have someone we're going to bring on experts for every Big Ten team next year, or not next year, this summer, to discuss the preseason, to preview each team. So if you have a person you like as an expert, send us for your school, send us our way, because we've only booked a few of them so far. So we are open to suggestions.
Yes, please.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for rocking with us, and we will see you in the next one. Have an awesome weekend.